Anyway, somebody very thankfully told me about Payne Orchard, and I went there. And I've never been anywhere else to buy apples since. I really like it. I like all I saw there. And we're very pleased tonight to learn a little bit more about the Payne Orchard and about apples. We haven't limited the speaker any topic however he wishes to go. We did talk about some of the particulars of growing apples. So however you wish to do that tonight, but it's my pleasure to introduce from Payne Apple Orchards, the man himself, Mr. Payne, so come right ahead.
Well, it is an honor to be able to speak on our orchard and share it with people. And we'll tell you a little bit about it. And like he said, we don't really just put big signs up and things. We've always trusted we consider the whole community of Epworth a family. Because everybody, Richard, I know several of you's face, I've seen you several times. We trust y'all, to share with us, and we try to keep the business going for y'all, and for the Epworth community and many others. So we're very grateful for our customers and stuff. So we'll dig into it. Just some basics. Payne's Orchard was started by my dad, John Henry Payne. My mom following right beside him, Joy Bell Goss, Payne. The orchard is built on the original Goss land. We've got deed that goes back to 1930s, and I'm sure it goes back further than that. But Dad had an idea of starting a little orchard for the community of Epworth. He had 6 kids, so that's a lot of mouths to feed. And back in that time, we're still kind of a little shy on labor rates being payable to where you could really do things. You had to do some extra income. So Dad got the bright idea to clear off some land and plant the apple trees, and it started from there. I'll get into the grafting portion of things a little bit here in a minute. He's very gifted on how to grow trees, vegetables, whatever. God gave him a talent that's amazing. And through training his children, his kids, we now know how, we've learned how to do it. But anyway, Dad started it, and we're sitting on around 1,000 apple trees. We still graft, if we catch a deal in a few trees, we will buy them. But we do our own grafting, raise our own honeybees. We sit on about right at 80 peach trees. We try to keep them limited because they're a little more aggravating than apple trees. Like this weekend, we're probably going to be working all night fighting frost, and we got hit pretty hard last year. But it's in God's hands. We take it one step at a time. We have over 16 different varieties of apples. Daddy had to go when he got at this. He was actually smart enough. He got to noticing that when you ever notice when you go by some of these old cattle pastures, horse pastures and stuff, there's usually always an old apple tree, an old homestead tree. And no matter the weather conditions or what, it seems to either most time have apples on it or whatever. So Daddy said, instead of getting these fancy varieties that's alternate bear, which means it bear heavy this year, it may not have nothing next year, and then next year it might do it again or whatever, he wanted to stick with the traditional apples. The old Stamen Winesap, Red Winesap, Limber Twigs, the old-timey Goldens. Keep it simple. And then later on, we brought in a few of the Johnny Golds, Detroits, and then Daddy come up with one that's called the Brown Golden. It's kind of like our filet mignon of the orchard. It's all-purpose, anything you want to do with it. He had actually found it on another tree. It was one limb by itself, and he grafted from it. And it turned into the best thing that's ever happened to Payne's Orchard. A lot of people call it the pear apple because it resembles a pear when you eat it. But just things like that, the knowledge that God gives us to be able to farm and keep a local business. It's great just having a place right here next door to go. And, if Georgia's playing football, you can get your product and get back to the house as quick as possible. And basically, like I said, we've kept it simple. I mean, I can't stress that enough. I mean, our honor system, that blows. But we have a lot of fun from people that come out of town. And if we're not around there and they see the little jewelry box that was my mom's, sitting on the counter with money, you know, hanging out the sides of it, you're that trusting? Yeah. You know, it's make your own change like you would an offering plate, as they used to say, you know. You know, every now and then you got somebody to rub a dollar bill real hard to see if it's, but, you know, no, we trust the community. You know, and like I said, even though we call ourselves Payne's Orchard, we're Epworth's Orchard. Yeah. I mean, each and all of us anybody that's done business with us, you know, like I said, we depend on y'all. And everybody, you know, anybody comes down and once they see how simple and easy it is, it ain't a bunch of gimmicks. And one key thing that I stressed each and every person, we do not and will not buy stuff and resell it. Our product that's there. And now you've got to get more, I guess now you got to get a little more technical with Facebook, you know, to keep up with family and friends or whatever. We depend on that to post because we're seasonal, and we are. You know, when we got it, we sell it. Even the honey comes straight off the honeybee hives into a jar. That's it. There's nothing added to it or anything like that. Even the apples that's put in a bag is done by hand, no equipment. And my wife is the one, Miss Laura right there. Every apple in every bag is picked up by her. So, and you know, that's work itself. And it is a lot of work, but we enjoy it. I mean, we keep it so simple to kind of like you'd step back in time. We've been told that. You know, we've had people come down and say, it's like stepping back in the 1930s here. And I'm sitting here looking for a horse and buggy. I'm not, no. On the honeybees. But we usually keep around, right now, around 40, and then after the swarm season happens, which is here shortly, the time we harvest honey, we'll wind up with about 65 stands of bees. Again, we don't buy our bees. We're blessed with the swarms. We keep, like I said, everything on farm. I would inspire everybody, you know, if you're not allergic to them, try it. Get you a hive of bees. You know, the main basics of them is take care of them. It's like you would a child. Natural honey will not turn to sugar. I'll argue that till the day I die, that it will not. I mean, they've proven that even over in Egypt, even in biblical times. You know, Bible speaks of the honey. You know, they have busted clay pots open where they have dug into them caves and stuff, and it still be pure honey. So anything God gives you won't hurt you. So you got to have quitting sense on some of it. But, you know, yeah. But, I think we had right at 62 hives, and again, we're down to about 40 hives, and we done all we could do. You know, you can't break into them and say, you know, you've got the basics where you can get into them and say, okay, it's fungus or an insect got in there and killed them out, or the queen died. Well, I'm digging a little deeper. I'm like, well, why'd the queen die? You know, if they had plenty of honey and stuff. There's just some things, I don't know if it has to do with now the cell phone towers and stuff we're eat up with, if it's causing miscommunication in their little signals. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of speculations out there, but I haven't heard the answer. You know, if any of y'all do, please call me. 'Cause I mean, I'd love to stop, you know, that process of it. And then for the most part, the grafting, we talked about the grafting. Now that is one of the most traditional things you can do. Even the Bible mentions grafting. We're being grafted in. It is such an easy thing, it can be overthought. And I used to, when I watched my dad do it, I was like, how in the world? He can split a limb on a 45-degree angle, split a root system on a 45-degree angle, make a split down the center on both of them, entwine them together, wrap it with paper tape, put it in some old sawdust in a protected area, and a month later, you got green tips coming out. You know, I'm sitting there going, Lord, if we cut them trees in half and we tried that, they'd fall apart. Yep. But it's actually, I mean, it's a simple thing, and I encourage even if you're, you know, if you got grandkids, graft a family tree with them. If you got an old apple tree, try it. Don't just get one. Graft 5 or 6. Try it. Learn the process, and there's several videos for that. But actually now, even if you got a problem with arthritis and it's hard to grip a knife to cut with and stuff in your hands, There's actually a tool you can order. It's called a grafting tool. It's $24. And one side of it will make a notch cut. Anybody that's ever seen a bow and arrow, it literally is a notch. The other side, when you flip it on the other side and make the cut on your applewood side, it makes a perfect 45 on both sides. You stick it together and it just about guarantees what it's called the Cambrian to make a perfect bond. And you keep it tight, don't wiggle it around, tape it with your tape, you're good to go. Rootstock. I get called a lot. How do I pick what rootstock's what? Basically, you have standard, which is like them old trees we was talking about out in these old horse pastures and stuff. It's just massive trees. That's as standard as you can get. You have semi-dwarf, which is usually 8-10 feet tall. And then you have dwarf, and that's real, that's 4 or 5 foot tall. And a lot of the major orchards are getting into that because of the pick your own factors, ladder safety purposes for laborers, whatever you have. But the way that you can either call I think Quinn's Greenhouse, they might could get rootstock, and they can explain it just the same as anything. But like if you really want to do it the traditional way, you can either go into an old swamp bottom, and most of Epworth is somewhere around the line. There's either a pine thicket or a swamp bottom that's got crab apples all in it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there are crab apples everywhere.
Yeah.
On the ground, you'll notice there's always little apple shoots coming out of the ground. You can literally take a shovel, and I recommend this, I'm sorry I should mention this first, February. That's your hot time to do your grafting. Sap's down, that's your perfect time. Go out there, find you a couple of roots, pull them up, 5, I recommend 5 roots, pull them up, and say you got an old horse apple that was your great-granddad's, and the grandkids is over, try it. Investing in Payne's apple orchard, Daddy note coming into that, it takes about 5 years to get your investment back, if you're lucky. We could go into what we got into last year. Everything was set perfect. April 24th, we went to 23, 22 degrees. Wiped everything out. We followed, we was fighting frost previous nights. So there, it is a gamble. So that brings me back to the concept of why Daddy chose a lot of the varieties he did. They always had apples. Last year, one of our main crops was Rome. Now, a lot of people turn their nose up on a Rome apple. No, I don't like it. That's one of your most traditional apples to make apple butter, applesauce. The peeling's red, make apple jelly. It's got good juice in it, until it gets really, really ripe, then it kind of gets a little dry. But it dries good. Each stamen, all of them's the same. You just about can guarantee up here in these mountains, we're going to have dogwood winter, blackberry winter, walnut winter. So you don't get comfortable, even though it's 75 today. Tomorrow it could be 28 this time of year. But know your selection of what you're wanting. If you're wanting some, like I said, homestead trees for your grandkids to say, hey, we grafted that together to where when they get, if Lord lets time go on, 30, 40, 50-year-old, they say, hey, I grafted that with Grandpa, Grandma. Do it together. Now, I'm jumping around a little bit, but to get back on the root selection, crab apple, again, standard, don't cost you a dime. Dig it up. Now, if you've already got an established apple tree, it will do the same thing. On the ground, unless you mow religiously around it, whatever, it will do the same thing. It will sprout up little apple shoots. Pick you a good one out, and say it's you bought a tree at, anybody ever remember Johnson's Nursery in here? You remember Johnson's Nursery? They was real big on apple trees and peach trees and stuff. Most time you could go in there and they'd already have them preset where it was standard. They did it by numbers, which I'm not going to get into that. That's a big scientific thing. But say you bought a semi-dwarf. Well, the sprout coming out of the ground off that main root system will be pretty close to the same size of that tree. Well, if you take that root up, graft it, you're going to have, like I said, pretty close to the same thing. But you can actually, you're like, you know what? I don't want that tree to be that big. I want to play around. I want to see if I can make it smaller. You can actually take that limb, dig a hole, bring it down in that hole, put dirt over it, and leave the end of it out. It will sprout again, and you just step that tree down a size. You just dwarf it down again. And you can let that root and just keep the process going. We don't recommend that getting that small. If you ever come down to Orchard, you'll notice we've got a row on the bank of the road on the left. That's semi-dwarf. I particularly don't like them because we're not set up. Again, we're simple. We don't have all the fancy fine things of farming nowadays that they recommend. We don't have irrigation and water on the apple crops. So they're very prone to drought. And if we do hit, and we have, Tom can tell you, growing corn and stuff over the years, Epworth has seen its share of droughts. You know, and if that root system starts getting too dry, they'll die.
Yeah, because the root system is higher up, closer to the...
Well, I was fixing to get into that. On that grafting, the knot, I was talking about the notch knot. And if I'm all over the place, I'm sorry. But that grafted knot, you want to bury, if you buy a tree, any tree, apple tree, you'll always see there's a knot. Some of the root systems is just that far below that knot. If you bury that tree, say, you know what, if I plant that tree 6 inches deep, we get an old windstorm, it's going to blow it over. So I may need to go deeper than that knot. You will actually put that tree into a vegetative growth. It will grow beyond growing above that knot. I mean, it will put it into a massive state. So what I recommend is if you buy a tree and it's that shallow rooted, stake it and don't get above that grafted knot. Stay below it. But on the dwarf system, think of it this way. The bigger tree, most of us when we was kids in school, they taught us root systems go as big as the outside limbs. Apple trees, same way. They're little feed roots. So if you dwarf a tree down, and even if you plant it up to that grafted knot or what have you, it's still only going to put the root system out to the limbs. And it may be less amount of root system that's on it. That's why we usually try to say, okay, we like this size tree, this type of tree. That limb that's coming up out of the ground, that's the one we're going to get. We don't want to step it down no more. Because it's got a good root system, it's hardy, and it goes deep in the ground. And another concept on the grafting, there are a few people that get into this. The reason I mentioned the older varieties is there's what they call a patent law on a lot of trees. Be sure and research that out. In other words, say if you go to Home Depot and they're having a sale on, let's say a Honeycrisp. That's another big apple now that's taking the market pretty good. And say, hey, you know, old Clifford was talking about grafting. I think I'm going to graft me a limb or two of them, and I want me 4 or 5 more trees or whatever. You better make sure on the patent law and stuff like that, because it can get into a mess. I wouldn't recommend it, you know. Even it's not like you're going to go sell the trees, but I still wouldn't trade the waters. Stick with the old-fashioned kind. And it's easy, you can research it. It's easy to research out. And like I said again, if you're doing it for yourself, stick with apples that have apples pretty regularly. Romes, stamens, limber twigs, Yates, Arkansas blacks. It's all keeping apples. And all of us was raised in a family to where they'd either take newspaper and wrap an apple up, or had an old root cellar and they'd spread them under hay or whatever, and they knowed what apple to keep. And that's why, like with Dad, he kept it simple to where when you come down and bought apples, it was just like you was buying them with your grandmother again. You could keep them the same. They still cook the same. And we don't mass produce them so much that we're picking them green. You're able to get a tree ripened, pretty close to tree ripened fruit, have time to take it home, do what you want to do with it, dry it, can it, cook it, and knowing what you have. We get a lot of times people come down and they'll try to buy Fuji and make apple butter out of their grandma's recipe. Well, grandma's recipe may have called for Granny Smith's. So you can't use the same amount of sugar or whatever. So, but like I said, with Payne's Orchard, to sum everything up, we're simple. We're right here off 326 Tankersley Ln. We appreciate everybody that comes and has done business with us for years. I mean, we're dealing now with a lot of people where I remember when I was just a little fella and it was just starting, you know, the grandmothers and, you know, now the mothers, now the kids, now those kids has had kids, you know, so it's cool to be able to share that in the community. And, you know, as long as we have the support, we're going to keep going strong. Trust the Lord. You're farming, you're always praying. You've got to trust the Lord. I mean, no matter what you do. Yes,
May I
ma'am.
ask a question? And I love all the things about all the different apples and stuff. She also mentioned bees. Do you have honey year-round from your hive?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or certain times of year you have it?
It's, again, like I mentioned beginning, we're seasonal.
Okay.
I didn't clarify on the honey, and I'm sorry about that. Usually I start to harvest, or I say we start to harvest about the end of July.
Okay.
And the reason that is we have now figured out, I did a little bit of research and stuff, we have some of the prettiest mountains, some of the prettiest wildflowers up here. But there's a timeline on them. You'll go through a lot of dead time. And that goes back to what I was talking about with feeding the honeybees and stuff. Usually through the about May, June, and July, you have, you know, you're done past the apple blooms, you're done past the peach. You get a little bit of firewood, corn tassel, so forth, just, you know, whatever. We started planting sunflowers. My brother, Chris, over there actually allows us to plant his field down there. I think it's because we keep it mowed for free. So, but it's about an acre, give or take. And so we started planting sunflowers. And if you'll go on Payne's Orchard website, you'll see there's pictures of the sunflowers. And the honeybees just fell in love with them things. And it's got such a nectar to them that's amazing. I mean, I think my wife or I may have posted some pictures on the Payne's Apple Orchard site where the honeybees was just, they can share. See, when you're dealing with, say at most 60, 65 stands of bees, you're not talking about, you know, 1,000 bees, 100,000 bees. You're talking, you could be pushing over 1 million honeybees that's flying through the air. I mean, it's very well possible that our honeybees has been to y'all's place. Each and every one of them just cycling because they'll fly a long ways just to get nectar, pollen, whatever. So, like I said, the reason we keep it seasonal is we don't separate where I don't come out here and say it's pure sourwood honey. Because that'd be a lie. I can't say that. Because I don't have a tracker on the bees to shot collar them and say, no, you're getting on this flower, you need to be on this one. The only thing I wished I could do is crossbreed them with lightning bugs, then I could get 2 shifts working. I could produce more honey. But no, it's usually, like I said, July, and we don't separate it. All the comb is natural, gets cut in a pot. My wife, again, she's my little worker. She'll start squeezing the comb and busting it, and it goes to a draining system, and then it goes into a bottle. And it's got every bloom that Epworth had is in that bottle. It don't matter if it was wild cherry, it don't matter. But we figured out with the sunflowers, it give an extra kick to the honey. And it gives it like an amber gold color. If you'll take the jar, if you'd bought a jar off of it, you got a little bit of it left, hold it up in the light and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's like a rosy red amber color, I guess. It's pretty, but the flavor's fanatic. I mean, it's amazing. When people find out you have peaches, which is usually contenders, and I didn't mention that, and I'm sorry, contenders, Reliance, and then we have a white peach. I have no clue what it is. I know it ain't a Georgia Belle. We accidentally got them. They're good. Inside of them look like cotton candy when you break them open. But we got a few different varieties of the peaches. We sleep at night knowing we ain't burning people. So when we give you a bushel, it's a bushel. You know, and a bushel of peaches could weigh up to 60 pounds. Come to find out, they was having to pay over $90 to $109, and we was getting bombarded. So we had to start doing a list thing. You know, we hate to be that way, first come, first serve. But, you know, it's just the peaches, I would love to grow more of them, but they are a very touchy thing to get into. But on the honey, yes, it is seasonal.
One of the things about the honey, many years ago, I had really bad allergies.
Yeah.
And still fight allergies, but, I just kept having such bad reactions to the shots. And a doctor in our area retired, he started doing his own research, and he was the first person that told me, he said, go get honey from your area
Yeah.
that's been pollinated. I said, that's what goes in allergy shots, is whatever you're allergic to.
Yeah.
And it changed. I didn't suffer near like I used to. And that's why I was asking, because we moved back up here.
Yeah, move back up
I've
here,
even
yeah.
gotten honey a long time ago from y'all, if I was up and visiting
Yeah.
Mom, but we're living here now.
Well,
But
good.
I couldn't remember. I want to add my name to your list.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, like I said, the business cards is there, and if you don't get me, if you don't get a hold of me, leave a voicemail. Like, I'll have conversations with Dad when we're going on our little deer hunting trips and stuff. And I'm all the time asking him, Dad, how come you didn't have to worry about this back in the late 40s and early 50s? You know, what's changed? You know, is it stuff that's been brought in on us? You know, or is it stuff that's been broadcasted through the air? I mean, you know, you almost get into a conspiracy theory there for a second, you know, but you kind of got to learn to change with it. You do. You know, and the good thing, again, the good thing is it's a button away. You can get on your phone. I mean, try it tonight for fun. You get home, open up your cell phone. Most all cell phones now, even the ones that I think the government issue ones, Dad's got it. He's 75 or 76 years old, and he has learned how to speak to Google. Oh, Lord. There ain't no arguing with that man now. If Google said it, it's the law. No, but it's very educational. I mean, they have now, people has been able to share their knowledge and willing to make videos and stuff, to where if it's as simple as cutting hedge bushes to pruning apple trees or blueberries or honeybees. And like I said, don't be afraid to try stuff for yourself. Homestead. Lord knows, go to the grocery store now. For one, you don't know what you're buying. You don't know how many fingers has touched what you're eating. You know, and the cost. I mean, goodness gracious, just you know, a basic family now, it's very expensive. So I promote homestead yourself. You know, invest, or even when you're speaking to your children or grandchildren, encourage them to start getting into a few apple trees and peach trees, or if you live in Epworth, holler loud enough and I'll probably hear you. Yeah, you know, crow flies ain't that far. So, but I appreciate it. Our family appreciates it. We appreciate the support, and again, thank you for having us to come share a little bit. I may have been everywhere, all over the board. Just you got it all up in your head, and it's hard to get it out your mouth sometimes because you got so much stuff you've learned over the years. So, you know, and that's what I was telling you on the phone is you can get on one subject and talk for 4 or 5 hours. Yeah, I mean, it's just, but it's in a nutshell, that's what it is. And thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Well, we thank you all for coming, and thank you all for having your apple orchard out there. My friend Richard from Arkansas just found something that was just like being at home when he came to your orchard.
Good, I'm glad. Appreciate it.
And I tell other folks that same story. Go by there, you won't be disappointed.